call a guy to come out the next day, and we escort him into the booth. He's supposedly like the best in the area, and he comes to the car. He's like, I'm not touching that. So Barrett-Jackson had been successful in Arizona. That was their big show. Everybody kind of knew about it. We, at DuPont Registry, we had a booth there as well. We were a big partner with them and support. They had an idea that they wanted to expand a little bit, and they decided that South Florida was the place to be. So they found they decided that in springtime they wanted to do a miniature version of their Scottsdale auction in Palm Beach, and just to test the waters and see how it went. So of course, they called in favors to all of their big sponsors, and they asked, the DuPont registries of the world that had always supported them, and said, would you come down? And for us, it was easy because it was kind of in our backyard, so that, we didn't have to fly to it, we didn't have travel, but it was the first of the series of them, expanding all these different Barrett-Jacksons, and, the first Palm Beach went really well. I mean, better than they expected. The crowds were good. People down in South Florida had never seen anything like that. So we had to bring our A game out, and we started figuring out, what are we going to do with the booth? How are we going to, show up and really put our best foot forward? And which is when I had seen one of the articles, I think it was in like European Car or Super Street or something about Hartmut. I was like, well, look, RennTech's right there in South Florida. We have a relationship with Hartmut a little bit, that they had advertised with us. I think Steve had owned a RennTech car at some point. On a whim, I call Hartmut and I says, listen, I know this is a big ask, but if the car's around, he goes, yeah, come get it. No problem. No big deal. Like it was like I was borrowing his Tercel. No big deal. So we end up securing the chrome SL 600, 1,000 pound-feet of torque, 900 horsepower, whatever it ended up being, car for our booth, and it was just jewelry. I mean, it was just jewelry, and just stopped. When it came off the transport truck, everybody, and this is Barrett-Jackson, and these guys have seen some cars, it stopped traffic, and it was really an impressive centerpiece for the booth. But this is pre-wraps. This is pre, the spray-on chrome that you see now at SEMA. There was a German company making this very special chrome kit, and it was like there was a way that you had to prep the car, and then you dusted this chrome dust on it and then clear coated over it. It was a very, very tedious process. Any mistakes, the car had to be brought back and started all over again. It was insane. Like I said, back in the day, it was a $45,000 paint job. This car was promoted everywhere, and I mean, nobody had ever seen a chrome car. People dreamed about it. Some of the hot rod guys maybe polished some aluminum. That was probably about the most you ever got as a chrome car, was an old vintage raw aluminum car that had been polished. I mean, basically the car looked like an Airstream. So you got to remember, this is over 20 years ago. And to have a $40,000 paint job on a car that wasn't even an SL65 yet, because that hadn't even come out yet. This is still the 600, which is the twin turbo V12, and Hartmut does his RennTech magic on it. To have a car with a $40-something thousand paint job and 1,000 pound-feet of torque, nobody had ever seen or heard, or even most people hadn't even imagined the idea of being possible. Cars like that back in the day, and guys like Hartmut were, set the tone for everybody else, that there was really no limit if you didn't have a cap on your budget. The rule is that you either need time or you need money, and if you don't have one, you just need more of the other. At that point, basically anything is possible. We bring the car into the booth. It's in the booth. It's gorgeous. I mean, just you want to stop traffic, you have a chrome SL 600 in your booth, and it definitely draws attention. So part of the booth was set up with these cocktail tables so that people could, sit and talk and do business. Well, the tables and chairs we had were higher, and it was like a wire framed with kind of a wood base chair. It was the preview night, and this woman had been sitting at the chair, and she puts her purse on the chair, and she's sitting and talking. Everything's great. Well, when she goes to get up, the weight of the purse tips the chair over onto the fender of his chrome car. And sunk. Hartmut was a hero of mine. He let us use the car, and here's this mark. It wasn't horrible, but it was there. I'm freaking out at this point. I'm like, this is a $40,000 paint job. You can't just fix this. So I run over to the Meguiar's booth, and the Meguiar's people were always amazing. And I got to be friends with, Amy and Tony and a lot of those guys from Meguiar's, because they were at every show. I knew them from Hot Import Nights and everywhere else. And it was all the same crew, that we all did the same shows together. And I run over there, white as a ghost. And I was like, I need help. You guys have to come. So they happen to have this this guy on staff there that did a lot of their teaching for their buffing and paint correction and things like that. And he comes over and he looks at it. He goes, well, look, I can probably work on the paint a little bit because it's basically just clear coat. He goes, it didn't go under the clear coat, but there's a dent. So I'm flipping through the phone book looking for paint, and this is phone book, literally, trying to find paint dent guys. Call a guy to come out the next day, and we escort him into the booth. He's supposedly like the best in the area, and he comes into the car. He's like, I'm not touching that. I was like, dude, you don't understand. Like, you have to help me out. And he spent, and this is probably maybe a 2-inch mark. I mean, just enough that you could see that it was there. It really, really wasn't bad, but this car was perfect. He probably spent 4 hours. I mean, just borderline shaking, because once I had told him what the paint was and how it was, like, I can't guarantee anything. Like, you're on your own. I was like, dude, just like, whatever you do is going to be better than what I do. And he spent 4 hours sitting there heating the paint up and with his little mirrors and his lights and his little sticks, and he gets the dent out. Perfectly curved, everything's fine. But now I've got to contend with the paint. So the McGuire's guy comes over and all his little magic, he brings out all his tools, he's breaking out stuff from the truck, and he fixes it. Would have never known it was there. Nothing ever happened. Show's over, and I drive the car back to Hartmut, and I said, listen, he's like, how was everything? And the car was phenomenal. I mean, I had never driven anything with 1,000 pound-feet of torque like that car ever. I mean, we were 90 miles an hour on the highway. I punched the gas, and the traction control light's coming on. It was insane. So I get the car back to Hartmut, and I says, listen, I was like, car was amazing. Everybody loved it. I was like, I have to tell you what happened, though. And he's like, oh, no, what? So I tell him, and listen, full disclosure, I go, it's fixed. And he's like, I can't see where it was. He goes, and I said, listen, I had to tell you though. I was like, I felt bad. I felt compelled in case something ever down the road happens. It's like, I just wanted you to know. He gave me full respect for not covering it up and not telling him. And he's like, a lot of people wouldn't have done that. And I said, well, look, I felt like it was the right thing to do. And I think that it taught me a little bit about, how much your reputation was important in this industry. And it was something that I really, really held as a high importance to me, is to be able to maintain my integrity throughout the industry. And people knew that they could turn their car over to me, they could give it to me, and they were going to get it returned in better condition than they even gave it back. The press fleet people would always laugh. They're like, you don't have to return the cars with gas in it. And I'm like, you gave it to us with gas, and I'm going to return it with gas. And it was interesting to see how many people reacted more to me maintaining that level of integrity, that they were more surprised because they were used to people being a different way. Maintaining that level of integrity throughout my career has really opened a lot of doors, because there's a lot of people that easily turn keys over to me or put me in a position of responsibility that I probably wouldn't have gotten if I didn't have that reputation.
You asked for it, and Auto Tempest now has an app. So head over to your app store now, download it to your phone, and leave them a great review. So now, whether you go to autotempest.com by clicking the link in the description below, or just open up your phone app, you'll be getting access to all the results from all the major listing sites in one place. That is why we love Auto Tempest so much. We appreciate their support of VINwiki over the years, of Car Trek, but most of all because it is exactly where I go every day to find my next car.